So I first started playing music all through school, like pretty well, mostly on the trumpet, but started picking up guitar in boarding school and mates teaching me stuff, and one thing led to another, and I ended up playing at a wedding at my sister, for my sister's cousin. Perfect first song, at least for the first high pressure, you know, the bride's walking down the aisle, everything's happening sort of song. I've been doing solo stuff for maybe the past 6 months to a year, really starting to build volume up, you know, building into other repertoire and stuff like that, but maybe even 10 years now. It's been a hot minute, I think. Things like that, it's just always been a part of my life, and I've slowly transitioned into making it more of a part of my life professionally as well, which has been brilliant. So yeah, I think that's how I got into the music industry. I think, yeah, the first experience I would have had with music is actually pretty funny. It's one in the archives. I remember a video of me playing on nothing but a tissue box and a rubber band, just strumming along to Smooth by Rod Thomas and Santana, thinking I was absolute hot stuff. I don't know how much I actually remember of that more than the video, but that's probably where it started, was, you know, mum being like, here's a guitar. The first sort of pub gig me and my sister did was at the Whitmore ages ago. Honestly, I would have been 15, 16 at the time. I can barely remember sort of the details, but like I remember the stress of realizing we didn't have a music stand, so there was just like an old antique suitcase that we propped up on a chair, and it's like, yep, that'll do. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Probably one of my favourites recently would have been playing at actually Sky City's District. It was just like an awesome amphitheatre shaped sort of setup, and it's quite a cool place to play. I wouldn't say that I've necessarily had a best gig for that reason, but there are like songs that I'm like, oh my god, when I did Sweet Caroline at the Cumbee that time, that was like, oh, amazing. You know, having the whole crowd go ba 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 is just like, oh, absolute top tier stuff as a musician. Like I remember one day I was, you know, back home in Kangaroo Island. There's not a whole lot to do, believe it or not, when your next door neighbour's 5k's down the road. I was sitting here just playing on this dodgy little Casio keyboard, probably costs, you know, $20 these days. 21 guns, both parts, you know, one hand doing one thing, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And like, I was like, Mum, look at what I can do. And she's like, how'd you do that? I was like, well, I just listened to it, you know, and that was sort of a moment where I realised, oh, I should probably try to do this, you know. And I think for a lot of people with their passions and things that they are good at, it's when they realise, oh shit, you know, I'm actually really enjoying not only kind of sucking at something, like I don't mind being bad at it, but I'm getting a lot from this, and it's really a nice positive feedback loop where you start getting better and it motivates you to then be better and keep going, you know. And it wasn't like, oh my god, this is my career. As I said, like I've done years of engineering that in hindsight I probably wouldn't have done. Some of the challenges for me personally, I think, is just like balancing that lifestyle, because it's quite a conflicting place to be when you're staying up to midnight or 1 or even 2 o'clock, depending on when you finish and where you finish. Finding a style or sound or something that you like doing, and it doesn't need to be like, oh, you need to find a space that you're happy to play around with and investigate. And I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges for a lot of newer musicians, is finding what they like doing, finding what you're good at and finding what you enjoy, and finding what sort of creates that positive feedback loop where you just want to do more. I think that's one of the challenges. I remember when I first learned guitar, it was Neon. That was the song. If I could get my hands moving like that, I'd be fine. And looking back at that, it's still a very challenging song, but it's not the same motivational challenge that it once was. So I've kind of taught myself guitar and things like that. I never really got lessons for guitar, and I think having a really good theoretical backbone in my education, you know, going to Ross Trevor, it was a very musical sort of school. There are a lot of scholarships and stuff, that's why I was there. And I still do a lot of things that are inefficient and clunky. I'm not a technically good guitarist, if that makes sense. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, but definitely not at that top end, and I'm definitely not some professional amazing guitarist. It's all self-taught little things that work for me. And I would describe myself as some weird bridging place between an acoustic soloist and a band. I use a lot of looping and effects and stuff, which you'll see, and that stuff adds a lot of different layers, which is really, really cool, but it also means that I'm not as simple as like one guitar and just a microphone. It's really difficult to just say, yeah, I'm an acoustic soloist or an electric guitarist who sings as well, because there's a bit more going on sometimes. Not all the time. Some songs are super simple, but it's a weird thing. I don't really know. I could call myself a looper. I don't know, but it's one of those things that isn't super well explored. Like I could say I use a similar thing to Ed Sheeran and how he makes more sound, and a lot of people understand that. It's a weird one. I don't know how to define myself as a musician necessarily in, you know, strict terms, because I've never really tried to. I just do what I do, if that makes sense. I think, yeah, finding music that makes you feel things And being able to play that is pretty damn motivating in itself. You know, you got your Jimi Hendrix, your John Mayers, your Eric Claptons. I absolutely love all the bluesy stuff, you know, even your major sort of blues, like your happier sounding stuff, you know. And even some, you know, old school classics, your Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, or go newer with Arctic Monkeys, ballpark music, like the list goes on. They're just music that makes me feel things is usually the stuff that'll make me motivated to play things. Because if something elicits emotion, I want to be able to recreate that, and I want to make other people feel that emotion, especially, you know, the more happy things. Occasionally I'll pull out the Johnny Cash's Hurt, but, you know, maybe a background in art where they can create something that does move people. I think it is a cool gift to have, and quite a motivating thing to be able to have that effect on people. As much as, you know, it's just good light-hearted fun, it's definitely not the most serious thing. That really does motivate me. I think if you're trying to start out with music, it definitely does help to understand what's happening musically. I think having a basic theoretical understanding is really important. Starting out as a professional musician is a completely different question. I would say, like, really, really important. I'm going to generalize. Most musicians probably aren't the most organized people. Get organized with shit. Like, make sure you are tracking things, making sure everything is organized and structured, because you're not going to be able to scale something if you're doing it very haphazardly. Create systems, get your Excel spreadsheets out, get things happening in that regard. If you want to find a booking agent or something to get more gigs, ask the people who are doing it, because they're the people who have the experience and those plugs and things like that you're going to get the most gain from. Practice 5 hours a day, you'll be an amazing musician in a year, you know? If you're that excited about it, bloody do it, and you'll be better than I have, you know? Like, that's not the amount of time that I've consistently put in. It's something that's over decades or years or whatever, but put the time in, you know? Get practicing. Get metronomes out. Even if it's not the most exciting all of the time, it's gonna be the thing that gets you over that initial speed bump to where you get to a place where you're happy to, you know, practice and do things.